We had a client who was a woman in her 60s who came into the system because her daughter, an adult daughter, had gotten an order of protection out against her. She came to the next door neighbor's house, next to her daughter's house, was sitting on their porch. She called the police and said, look, she's here in violation of the order of protection. The police arrested her and brought her in. The charge is a misdemeanor violation of order of protection, a Class A misdemeanor. Carries a maximum range of punishment of 1 year in jail if you're convicted of it. She's in her 60s, was experiencing some mental illness, gets put in the jail, and ends up sitting there.
In Missouri, detainees in jails who have been found incompetent to stand trial due to a mental illness have been experiencing long wait times before they can be transferred to the Department of Mental Health for treatment. We spoke with Missouri Independent reporter Clara Bates, who has been following this story.
The problem is that a lot of people are being referred from the courts to competency restoration, but the problem is there aren't enough beds for all of those people. And so the people who are waiting for treatment, some of them have only been charged with misdemeanor crimes like trespassing, but they're waiting in jail for many months just to get transferred over to the treatment that would allow them to stand trial in the first place.
According to Clara's last reporting, there are 430 Missourians in jail waiting to be moved to state psychiatric hospitals. That's up from around 300 at this time last year. The Missouri House of Representatives discussed this issue during a health and mental health hearing in February of this year.
If there is a finding that someone's incompetent to proceed, as of last month, our reports from the Department of Mental Health are that on average, individuals who've been found incompetent to proceed are waiting 14 months before they're brought to the Department of Mental Health for their treatment.
The effects of waiting in jail for an extended period can worsen the conditions of someone with a serious mental illness.
The thing about people who have mental illnesses is that they are more sensitive to stresses.
Dr. Daniel Mama is an associate professor of psychiatry at Washington University, specializing in psychosis risk and serious mental illness disorders.
I mean, jail can be a very taxing situation for almost anybody. But if you have a severe mental illness like a bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, you're already more sensitive to stresses. And so it can be extremely traumatic, and it can trigger a worsening of symptoms, what we call a relapse in many cases.
The decline that Dr. Mama describes is exactly what happened to the woman with schizophrenia that we heard about earlier. She was referred for treatment after being charged with a misdemeanor violation of her daughter's protective order. Missouri Public Defender Annie Legomsky witnessed how her client struggled to manage her schizophrenia during her wait in jail.
2 weeks after this happened, after she was arrested, the daughter herself canceled the order of protection and said, I didn't mean for this to happen. I don't want my mom just sitting in the jail. But she sat in the jail and got worse and worse and worse. She spent over 450 days in the jail. That's almost 100 days over the maximum she could have been punished, even if she'd been convicted. We had to work with the jail and the prosecutor's office to file for civil commitment orders so that she could be taken to a hospital for psychiatric treatment. During those 450 days that she sat in the jail, she went from someone who was completely functional, able to talk and engage with people, just struggling. She was not talking to anyone. She was not leaving her cell. Her hygiene had completely deteriorated. She was 1,000 times worse than she was when she started.
I mean, this is not the place to have a hard time, handling your emotions.
Caleb Gear is a detainee in the St. Louis County Jail who suffers from a mental illness.
By the grace of God, are you able to get through it without, and a lot of people do, they have outbursts. There's a lot of fights, and a lot of, disagreements between people, and I think, people being on their meds is definitely the first place that it needs to be started. I hope that's something they're working on.
Major John L. Coleman of the St. Louis County Department of Justice Services spoke with us about the challenges of keeping mentally ill inmates for long periods of time.
We have the responsibility as the administration of jails to make sure that the officers are being trained to be able to manage individuals that have mental illnesses or that have adverse childhood experiences. When a person is not in their right mind at the time, when they tend to be more difficult to deal with and more difficult to manage, and it's harder to de-escalate that individual. You know, we have to concern ourselves with their wellness as well, the wellness of the officers and staff that are required to manage these individuals, and it can be difficult at times.
So what's being done to fix this problem? While Missouri lawmakers are still working on solutions, other states across the country have faced this issue and found ways to decrease their wait times.
Washington State is one of those states that a lot of folks across the country continue to point to. There was massive litigation there. They are nearly full compliance in getting folks into the Department of Mental Health within 14 days of the evaluation.
Washington has done a lot on competency to stand trial. They have been facing a federal lawsuit for a number of years.
Hallie Fader-Toe is the Director of Justice and Health Initiatives at the Council of States Government Justice Center, a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that ensures safe and healthy communities across the country.
There are a number of things that states are doing to help tackle this issue. One is building capacity and really understanding what sort of professionals and paraprofessionals are available to provide community-based treatment, to provide evaluation, restoration services. An important component of that is real attention to care that doesn't just restore someone's ability to stand trial, but positions them to be stable in the community.
We reached out to Missouri's Department of Mental Health for a statement on what they're doing to curb these wait times. They responded by saying, the Department of Mental Health is working to address wait times in a number of ways. Jail-based competency restoration is offered in 4 counties: Jackson, Clay, St. Louis County, and the City of St. Louis. Outpatient competency restoration is an option statewide for individuals charged with misdemeanor or non-dangerous felony charges. Additionally, forensic mobile teams comprised of nurse practitioners and social workers provide medication management and behavioral health services to clients in jails across the state.
There have been lawsuits in other states with similar wait times, and those have been successful in challenging the state and requiring more funding to solve this issue. States like Oklahoma, Kansas have all seen similar issues and had successful lawsuits filed by groups like the ACLU. So we haven't seen similar litigation yet filed in Missouri, but I think that's also something to keep an eye on.
The Department of Mental Health still predicts the number of people waiting in jail will continue to go up. However, lawmakers, advocates, and government officials suggest diverting people away from the criminal justice system in the first place to reduce these numbers.
Step 1 is really helping to divert people from the criminal system, the criminal legal system, and just to get them the resources they need. Our clients' families will call us and say, I just didn't know what to do. They were having a behavioral crisis, and so I called 911 and I didn't know what else to do. Anyone can call 988 at any time for someone who's in crisis, and they'll even send mental health practitioners out to you, to your location.